Andrew.
Oh, my thing's not linked. Hold on a second. Oh, well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Let me see what's going on here. All right.
How are you?
It's a mystery. How are any of us? How is this going on? I always find it funny when people ask me how I am, not just because of that play on words, but because it's like, suffering has ended.
That reminds me, I showed my mom your video with Emerson, and she was like, he got stumped on the first question. It was basically, tell me about the seeker, tell me the story of Andrew. And she was like, he got stumped on the first question. And I was like, yeah, it's complicated.
It's kind of like saying, tell me what you believed when you were 5. It's like,
yeah.
Oh shit, I don't remember. So long ago. That's what it feels like anyway.
I'm wearing
it's just that the awakened mind is so non-identified with the personal story on a certain level that it's almost not that, Emerson's an excellent interviewer and obviously awake, definitely a sage, but to my mind, it almost feels like a trick question. It's not. It's not. Yeah. Most people would want to launch into that, but in the Zen tradition, that's not how it works too. And I kind of have some background in that. So that's why I kind of like, on a certain level, I'm automatically programmed to be like, because it's like, they would say, so tell me about your Zen. And if you're not awake, you would go, oh, when I was a little boy, blah, 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 and you go into the personal story. But if you're already fully established in the non-dual state, you might say something like, oh, there's a certain valley in China. When the spring comes, those flowers, it has nothing to do with your personal story, is the main point.
Well, I was thinking I could give you some quotes, and if you have any thoughts on any of the quotes, or
okay,
we could skip over, whatever. All right, let's go with Bodhidharma. To find a Buddha, all you have to do is see your true nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love Bodhidharma. I am the sound of Bodhidharma's shoe.
Say again?
So Bodhidharma is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might call it the true pulse. Bodhidharma had 4 disciples, and they came to him, and he was basically trying to figure out how to pass on this transmission, and the 4 disciples were kind of competitive on a certain level, trying to figure out, well, who really got this? Who's really going to get this? And he's going to tell us, type of deal. So the 4 disciples assembled, and he called the first one up, and he said, you have attained my skin. And the guy was like, wow, I attained Bodhidharma's skin. Holy shit. I got this. And the next guy said, you have attained my flesh. I go, oh, I must get this even more. And the guy bows. Third guy, Bodhidharma, said, you have attained my bones. And the guy's thinking, oh, I must have really gotten this the most. I mean, what's deeper than that, right? And the 4th guy, Bodhidharma, said, you have attained my marrow. And the guy didn't bow. He just stood there silently before he had said that. So he approached Bodhidharma, and unlike that, he didn't bow. He just stood there. Bodhidharma said, you have attained my marrow. So I take that one step further in my poetics, and I say, you have attained the electric river from whence all marrow flows.
That's beautiful.
We might call that the true pulse. It's like the rhythm of the intelligent energy of the cosmos.
Yeah.
What was that quote again you said?
To find a Buddha, all you have to do is see your true nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we call it Buddha nature. And that Buddha nature is clarity, emptiness, and awareness, all inseparably put together. That's what Buddha nature is. So one of the koans in Zen, they say, does the dog have Buddha nature? And really, it's a funny joke because from the awakened perspective, it's very obvious that the dog is like the perfect poster boy for Buddha nature. He's just brimming with it because it's fully established in the non-dual state. It has no problems. There's no suffering. It's got that smile, that generic Lego man face. And that's Buddha nature.
Would you say Buddha nature and Christ consciousness are synonyms?
Pretty much, yeah. To me, when my brain hears Buddha or Christ, the first thing I experience is emptiness. Kind of like sparkly emptiness, a sparkly nothing. Shimmering void.
Yeah. All right, how about a Nisargadatta quote? The greatest guru is your inner self.
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at guru. And it's good and bad in a way. It's like, so on a certain level, you are the truest guru. So if you meet someone that's somehow established in that state, or like an interface between you and that side of things, you're really talking to yourself on a certain level. And the other side of that, the darker side of that, is that, guru, you may have heard this said before, that guru operates on the frequency of self. And in that way, the self can fully and clearly hear every word from the guru's mouth. And yet, the other side of that is from a sage's perspective, who isn't playing the guru game. The guru is pandering to the self. And it's telling the self what it wants to hear so that it'll stick around and do the laundry for free and give away free hugs and,
Yeah.
So the sage is willing to tell you things that aren't as, they're more radically honest. Not brutally honest, radically honest. So not too nice, not too mean type of thing. The guru is a little too nice and a little too mean.
So would you say the sage is trying to get rid of you and the guru kind of wants you around?
Right.
That's the...
So, yeah, exactly.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go. This is Neem Karoli Baba. Love everyone, serve everyone, remember God.
So when Neem Karoli Baba was talking to Ram Dass, he looked him in the eye and said, Ram Dass. He didn't say, hey, Richard Alpert. Hey, Dr. Alpert. He said, Ram Dass. In other words, I'm talking to the truer you when I'm talking. He said, he didn't say that, but he said, Ram Dass, tell them the truth. He said, love everybody and tell them the truth. And Richard Alpert's me kicked in. I don't know if I can do that. I've got limits. He said, no. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to Richard Alpert. I'm talking to you. You are capable of that. I'm telling you, your true self, if you will. I'm telling the deeper, realer self of you that isn't bound by the separate me, ego, mind, self thing that goes by this story of suffering and separation. So I'm telling you, love everybody and tell them the truth.
Nice.
But you are the truth that you're seeking. You already are it. So in a way, you don't even have to find it. You already are that what you're looking for. You always have been. Do you have to know it? No. Do you have to realize it? No. But, suffering will continue for a seeming me. Yeah. It's not found. And so the Buddha said, the problem is you think you have time. You don't.
All right, let's
so many seekers want to put it off till the next lifetime, but if in the next lifetime you're not gonna be Lance anymore, if there is one. And so Lance will never have woke up type of deal. So it's that kind of vibe of like the idea of like, you have to wake up in this lifetime, you have to die before you die, so you don't have to die when you die.
Yeah. That reminds me of a post you just. I'm 99% sure it was you talking about the Buddha and reincarnation.
Yeah.
That was it. I found that interesting. That he said that he never said that when you die you will enter another human form.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That was interesting.
So if there's no self, if it's realized that there's no self, which is the main message of both Buddhism and Veda and all the really potent traditions, Zen, if it's realized directly, there's no self, there's no identity to cling to, then what would come back? Or to put it another way, they say the goal in yoga and meditation and all of the traditions, main goal is to become enlightened and never come back again into form. Well, if that's the goal, so again, maybe it's just the case that even back then, somebody asked a sage a question, they misinterpreted the answer, wrote it down into a book as if it's the metaphysical law, and now people believe that as religion. So back then, somebody probably asked someone like the Buddha or another sage, is there karma? Is there reincarnation? And they just said, well, from this perspective, it's realized now that there is no karma, there is no reincarnation. And then the seeker probably went, oh, so once you're enlightened, karma is gone, you don't get reincarnated. But until then, and the sage probably wasn't around to clarify for that. So that's why that story of the Buddha was posted on my wall, was, because somebody was, so it's the whole thing. So basically, rebirth, in a way, you could view it as, like, let's say you had a glimpse and the ego went away and then it came back. Well, that's rebirth.
Yeah.
Ego keeps coming back, and you're trying to stop that from happening to achieve liberation in this one lifetime. And that's probably truer than, you keep coming back. Like, or another way to put it, Alan Watts put it in the way that, if you know that you're everyone all at once, what's the difference between transmigrating from dream character body to dream character body versus, you're everybody anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying there's one soul and we all share it. But the self is weird. The self wants there to be separation and projects separation into every thought, idea, and experience it has. So that's where the confusion comes from, is because it's inventing fake separation and projecting it all over everything it sees. And it's not real. It's an illusion. And it creates suffering, and everything looks separate and cut up. It's not. It's all one seamless, flowing whole.
So this is a Ramana quote. To know God is to be God.
In other words, when you realize that, you've always been. It's just a realizing. It's not that you become the God that you aren't. Even God is an idea of separation, as if to say that there's a me and there's a God. And this God knows everything. That would be hell, to know everything. Like, the way we interpret knowing isn't the same as the intuitive, vast intelligence that runs nature within this dream. Another trick question I would put forth would be, how much energy exists within a dream?
I'd have to think about that. What's your answer?
You know what I mean? It's almost like saying there's no energy because it's all a dream, and therefore, why not infinite? What would stop it? How would it run out? Like, when you're dreaming at night, it's not like you run out of, I don't know how to put it. Let's say you're in a lucid dream. It's not like there's pieces missing because there's not enough. I don't know how to put that. Your whole world is being dreamt up right now on every level, regardless of what you believe. Regardless if you think this is all consciousness, you think this is all brain generated, either way, your entire world is being utterly dreamt up by you.
Are you able to talk with family and friends about this kind of stuff? The reason I bring this up, I just had a conversation with my sister, and I really gently introduced the idea that we might not have free will, and it didn't go over well. It
It
didn't go
never does it?
didn't
That's
go
one
over
of the
well at
most
all.
stubborn. Yeah, the whole there is no self, there is no free will. Those are the two that really the self does not want to hear, because
Yeah,
it wants to hear how to be in control, how to be more powerful, how
yeah.
to have an effect, and it's never in control ever, ever, not even a little bit. It's like it's like being a little kid playing with GI Joes. The GI Joe's not in control of anything. He's not even experiencing anything. There's nobody even in there. But it kind of looks like a little man moving around. Well, that's what we are. We're like little action figures of this divine energy that only exists within a dream. And for a moment, it gets identified with it as it moves it. That's what this is.
I don't think that message would be very popular to most of the population.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. They'll be rejected. Yeah.
Let's go with a Bob Dylan quote. How long can you search for that which is not lost?
Yeah, it's a good one. So the act of seeking itself is what obscures seeing it, ironically. And yet, if someone doesn't seek it, they're not going to find it. So it's kind of a paradox. Another way to put that is, in the Zen way of putting it, would be once seeking begins, it must be finished. Once you start that journey, there's no turning back. You can't just give it up. Oh, okay, I'm done seeking it because I stopped seeking. No, you didn't. No, you can't.
So you're saying
Once you've started this path,
your head's in the tiger's mouth?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Every sage is a tiger.
That's a quote as a seeker I used to hear, and sometimes it would bring me peace, and sometimes it was so frustrating. I guess depending on whatever was going on in the body mind.
It's supposed to be the case, it has to be. There's a sweet spot for frustration and a sweet spot for peace. You have to be outside your comfort zone enough that growth is occurring and progress is being made on that path. So if you're not frustrated enough, you're not really digging into it. And if you're too frustrated, you might kill yourself or something. So that's not going to help you. That's not liberation. That's just the end of the story. It's not even the end of the story of suffering. It's the unfortunately that happens sometimes with seekers. Even I had suicidal tendencies when I was a seeker at times. Suffered great depression, and it's kind of like the last ditch effort for the self to prove that it's real by saying, well, obviously I'm a real person who's really suffering because look what happened. I killed myself. It's also the seeking mind wants to kill itself, but it's not the body that you're trying to kill. That's where the confusion takes. It's not the body you have to kill. It's not the body causing suffering. It's this separate sense of self that we call the ego mind or the me. The me that thinks it's inside a body, it's not. It doesn't exist. That's what's this illusion. It's less real than even the body. So even if you believe there's only just consciousness generating brains and bodies within a dream, well, then that brain is generating this false illusion sense of self. So in a way, you could say the human body is real, the world is real, but the separate sense of self is not real. When I say the world is real and the body is real and more real than the self, what I mean is it's real in the same way that like a hologram is really a hologram rather than nothing. That a movie is really a movie rather than nothing. That a simulation is really a simulation rather than nothing. That a dream is really a dream. A daydream is really a daydream rather than nothing. So it's not, a daydream isn't real or unreal. It's a daydream. And this world is like that. It's kind of like a divine daydream. Yeah. But that divinity isn't to somebody. It's a vast impersonal spaciousness that has certain qualities. And those qualities are bliss, compassion, love, clarity, awareness, and emptiness, and others. But even that's just words. We can't really talk about that ultimate layer in words.
That reminds me of something Michael Markham just wrote. Like, if it's too subtle to, oh, you might have wrote this. If
That's
it's too,
me.
okay. If it's too subtle to notice, it's too subtle to talk about.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
Well.
Moving from you to Walt Whitman.
Oh, good.
Re-examine all that you have been told. Dismiss which insults your soul.
Yeah. So basically, he's talking about how cultural conditioning is what is traumatizing us and creating suffering. So this sense of separate self is partly genetic, and in a way, we are a self-domesticated animal that has somehow domesticated itself over time. And there is a genetic component to that, just like a domesticated pig and a wild boar have different genes and different epigenetic in other words, if you release a domestic pig into the wild, it'll start taking on more boar-like characteristics as the years go by. It'll start to rewild itself, and even the genes will flip on and off from domestic to wild. But there's still an element that it can't ever fully just become full blast a wild boar ever again, but there's this rewilding process. So human beings are kind of like that. There's a genetic component. There's also a cultural conditioning component. And the dualistic mind is what insults your soul. The dualistic mind is what's causing suffering. And the wild nature of the human form, of the human body, being wild, being free. Wild and free are almost the same word in a way. There's a reason for that in a way, because that's what's going on. So a successfully rewilded human is an awake human. And a Buddha is a sage, is just an awakened human who has realized that there's no separate self in here. There's just a wild animal spontaneously behaving, even if it appears as eloquent speech instead of flailing around like it's still just a rewilded human drenched in a non-dual state. So there's this stillness, there's this peace, there's this ease, this effortless flowing. I'm not thinking about what to say next, for example. It's just happening.
All right, let's move on to Ram Dass. We're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, so this non-dual state is home, it's paradise. And you're already there. This is the realizing that you've always been home. Or the way Ramana put it, when Ramana was dying, he was kind of perplexed by why some of the followers were so attached to his particular body. Is it to say, don't you realize I'm not this body? Like, I'm all this and none of this. This is all like a movie, You don't have to worry. And the way he put it, though, is he said, why are you so concerned with this body? I am here. Where will I go?
Yeah. All right, let's go to Huang Po. Here it is right now. Start thinking about it and you miss it.
Yep, this is it. The moment your mind wants to go seeking for it is the moment it loses it. It's always doing that. So this is literally it. Everything all around you, everything as one is literally already it. It's just the realizing it, the seeing that. It's right here. right here. It's just impossible to see, unfortunately, no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how many books you've read.
Do you think that the more books you read can be a hindrance to some people?
Probably. They'll probably perpetuate seeking on some level because some people have read, all the books,
Yeah.
and they were seeking much longer because they were still in that seeking mode and couldn't snap out of it. It's like a hamster wheel. There's nothing you can do about it until you get off the wheel. Oh shit, I was on a wheel this whole time. Oh, now I'm kind of dizzy. Then that settles. Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the
another way I put it is that you hear stories about in Zen. You hear stories about people that were Zen masters that never learned how to read, came from a small fishing village or something, and they don't know how to read, and they woke up faster because they were more in touch with that non-linguistic awakened state.
Do you think this happens to a lot of people that just don't have this language to express it, and so they never really speak about it, but they've had an awakening experience?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who have woke up, and a lot of them won't talk about it to anybody ever. Some of them will even go totally silent for a decade or something.
Yeah.
I'll take a vow of silence. Other people will wake up and not even know what happened to them. All they know is that something happened. Everything's different now. And now they're at peace. They don't even know. They wouldn't even call it awakening. Maybe they don't even know what that word means.
Yeah.
Or they don't even look at it in that framework. And yet it happened. They just didn't have the intellectual understanding type context to see it that way. But suffering still ended. Seeking still ended. And the mind quieted down.
This is my longest quote. It's a Nisargadatta quote. Once you realize that the road is the goal and that you are always on the road, not to reach a goal, but to enjoy its beauty and wisdom, life ceases to be a task and becomes natural and simple in itself in ecstasy.
So the seeker is efforting. It's doing everything it can to end the suffering, which will then end the seeking. It's doing everything it can to know and understand and find the real meaning, to find the secret technique, to find the thing that's seemingly hidden. And from the awakened perspective, everything is just effortlessly flowing, effortlessly occurring. And it's easier being, enjoying life. That's what ecstasy is. Ecstasy is when you take bliss and you deepen it, or you heighten it, or you amplify it. Ecstasy is bliss squared, if you will.
Yeah.
And it just happens because there's juxtaposition of the fact that suffering's no longer there, or at very least 90% of it is gone. The best way I can put this is like, your whole life you've been exerting 10 units of control to feel well, maybe 10 times more than the average person even. And you've had to develop that tool set, and now suddenly there's only 1 unit of suffering occurring and you have 10 units of control, so that converts into 9 units of bliss, if you will.
Yeah.
It's a very dualistic way of me putting it, but maybe that'll be helpful for some
words.
Yeah.
All right, let's move. Are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson? Are you a fan?
Oh yeah, that's
okay. This is one of his quotes. I don't believe anything, but I have many suspicions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the word lie is in the word belief. Maybe that'll help some people remember how to spell it. The word lie is in the word belief. I think that tells us everything we need to know about it.
Yeah.
Another way I would put it is understanding is greater than believing. Knowing is greater than understanding. And realizing is greater than knowing. There's a hierarchy. And on the bottom of that hierarchy, you have Santa Claus is going to be here in the morning. And I believe it. And I understand that there's a possibility, as uncomfortable it makes me feel, that Santa Claus is bullshit. And I've been lied to by my culture, my parents, my religion, all along. And then one day, you might even, kind of be able to know, Santa Claus isn't real. But you could also, you could be told that, for example, and in words, go, okay, now I know Santa Claus isn't real. But you could also realize that directly, right? Let's say at the mall and you pull the beard off and you go, wait a minute. Hey, all at once, suddenly everything's different. All at once. There was no words, no intellectual understanding, no need for belief to shift around. There isn't really knowledge habit. It's just a direct realization at that point. An awakening is a direct realization. So in other words, the seeker could master all the words in the radical non-dual community, for example. They could parrot them back and be real convincing about it. They could even know for sure on some level that that's the case and still not realize it and still be suffering.
Mm.
And someone else could directly realize this and not heard any of those words before in their life and directly realize it and not need the belief, the knowing, the understanding. And yet the path of the seeker is one of believing, understanding, knowing for sure, which might be like gnosis, and then direct realization. And direct realization occurs for nobody. So by the time direct realization dawns, there's nobody left to claim an achievement or to have any self-identity attached to that.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's kind of funny to me when people say things like, well, so-and-so has a spiritual ego. It's like, well, not really, right? It's like, it's kind of like saying, there isn't an ego, first of all. There isn't one in anyone ever. So for someone to say, you have a spiritual, well, first you're saying that they have an ego, which clearly they don't. So if you're saying that, either you're misspeaking and don't realize it, or you're not awake. There's nobody here.
Yeah.
So any reaction is always a projection of the belief that there's somebody in there. There isn't. The self doesn't want to hear this shit. It would do anything to avoid this. Most seekers would do anything to avoid really hearing it. They would do anything to avoid conversations like this, usually, on a certain level. And if they did have a conversation like this repeatedly, they would avoid actually hearing what's being conveyed because it's threatening existentially. It's like death. It's like being threatened with a deadly weapon. Enlightenment is deadly. And that's why sages are a lot like tigers. And that's why you should probably be running. I don't know why you're not.
All right, let's move on to Trungpa Rinpoche.
Mm.
The bad news is you're falling through the air. Nothing to hang on to, no parachute. The good news is there's no ground.
Yeah, the groundless ground out of which being arises, seemingly. So, yeah, another way to put it is it's like falling through layers of clouds. It just there's no, it just keeps happening forever. There's no It's almost like floating. I like the way Thich Nhat Hanh put it too. He said, the real miracle isn't walking on water, it's walking on this earth. And yet, from the awakened perspective, it seems like I'm hovering just an inch above the ground.
Yeah.
You have to soar through the heavens. You know, it's just that there's just a feeling of lightness. There's a feeling of lightness. It's the best way to put it.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Now, I don't know how spiritual this is, but it wound up in here. This is John Dillinger.
Nice.
You can get more with a simple prayer and a Thompson submachine gun than you can with a simple prayer alone.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. Maybe it was on your page or somewhere else. I absolutely love that. I love that.
I got that from Robert Anton Wilson. That's where I got the quote.
Oh, okay. I love that.
I might have heard it from him, but I did post it.
Yeah, I do love that a lot because it shows you the nature of reality from a pragmatic way. In other words, the end of philosophy is pragmatism. You know, what can you do with, how can you engage the world in an efficient way? And so back in, medieval times over in Tibet and Nepal and things like that, they had something called Tantra. And Tantra isn't what we think of in the West as this overly sexualized thing necessarily. It was more of a expansion of consciousness through the energetic realm of things. So it's almost like sorcery in a way. And from their perspective in medieval times, they were casting spells and shit because they thought that was the most direct cause effect way to actually have an effect on the world. And now we don't see it that way. In 2021, we see it in a way where like, okay, so but Tantra, the heart of Tantra is pragmatism. In other words, what's the most direct, efficient way to have an effect? And so that would be directly engaging with the world, but in a very open, expansive way. So you could view form itself as kind of crumpled up, compressed consciousness into solidity. And what Tantra is the re-expanding out of that mental tension of form into this vast spaciousness, this expansive bliss, this awareness expansion thing. And it's all linked together. So if you become more aware of that kind of expanded view, you'll feel bliss, So if you're in a room and you open the blinds and suddenly you see a view of this vast open sky, that's going to have a psychological effect. It's likely very positive towards you maybe having an experience like that, for example, or just walking out in nature and looking at the sky, or many ways to have that. Even just physical relaxation itself can do that. Bliss itself can deepen into itself, creating ecstasy. It's another level of bliss, ecstatic joy. And from that level of ecstatic joy is most likely where human beings invented things like song and dance.
All right. Let's go to Timothy Leary. You are a god, act like one.
Yeah. The way I used to say it is, act like you know. When I was a seeker, I used to say that. If you knew, you'd act like it. Act like you know.
Fake it.
Yeah. So what he's trying to say is like, stop pretending to be so fucking limited.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to say. He's laughing in the face of authority because there isn't one.
Yeah.
And if there is no authority, and this is a kind of a Nietzschean thing to say, if nobody's an authority, everyone's an authority.
That would scare a lot of people. A lot of people want that that illusion of somebody's running, somebody up there knows what they're doing, and everything's,
Or they want the idea of like, well, I don't have to lead my own life. I'll just give all my power to somebody else and they can tell me how to live. Yeah. And that's what that's what the masses do. They are they have been infantilized by the cultural conditioning, and they're comfortable in that. They prefer to stay domesticated they prefer to stay as if they're a child, and they don't ever want to grow up. And most people go through their whole life, live 100 years, and stay at that level the entire time. And in that way, I would say that on a certain level, the way I would put this is, so obviously people can kind of mature and grow into a type of sovereignty and a type of adultship that is beyond cultural conditioning without mystical experiences, without any type of awakenings occurring. That's true. But also the way I look at it, and first of all, sovereignty seems as if it has control, but doesn't. So it's really, I would prefer a rewilding, because there's no free will or control. But however, I would say that Kundalini awakening is a lot like a second puberty. And enlightenment itself is a lot like a third puberty. So there's kind of levels of this cosmic adulthood, where you realize essentially that you're your own great grandparent type of feeling. And I think it's funny, there's little hints of that feeling throughout the words of sages from long ago. Like, for example, the Tao Te Ching basically means the union of the little self with the big self. That's what Tao Te Ching means. But it was written, supposedly, by a human named Lao Tzu, which is Chinese for either old man or old master. Well, his name was Old Man or Old Master? Let me think about that for a minute. There's a type of anonymity to that. Another way I'd put that is there's a power to anonymity. So if you write under a pen name and no one ever discovers who it really is, for some reason there's an inherent power, I don't know, 100-fold or something like that. You're going to sell more books, people are going to read it more, but if you ever get credit for it, the magic gets shut down. So William Shakespeare, for example, is another example of that. There is no such person as William Shakespeare, never existed. Well, there was, but he was illiterate and couldn't sign his own name, and his daughter was illiterate. Clearly, he wasn't the greatest English writer of known history. So, in my humble personal ego opinion, I have to differentiate so people know where these are coming from. You know, this is a silly little dualistic thought. However, I believe that there was like a type of cult going on of some tight-knit genius friends that happen to be Freemasons and Rosicrucians and things like that. It was basically Sir Francis Bacon and his 12 closest buddies writing under the pseudonym Shakespeare, William Shakespeare. Will I am Shakespeare. And what that is a symbol for and where that name comes from is the Athena, the goddess Athena. She wears a magic helmet and you can't tell who she really is. And that power of anonymity is prevalent. So Athena always is holding a spear as well. So she has a magic helmet that hides her true identity, and she has a spear. So, you know, Athena shakes her spear. It's the power of anonymity. If you go Google a picture of Sir Francis Bacon, and you're holy shit, that's a picture of William Shakespeare. It's the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is Athena the one that threw the apple that started the Trojan War? No.
Oh, that was, who was that? Helena or something? Or Helen?
All right, this is the last quote I have. It's a Osho quote. The greatest fear in the world is the opinion of others. In the moment you are unafraid of the crowd, you are no longer a sheep. You become a lion. A great roar rises in your heart, the roar of freedom.
Yeah. So people have mixed opinions about Osho. I find people either put him way up on a pedestal, way beyond any human that ever lived.
Yeah.
Or they say he's just a total piece of shit, kind of abusive cult leader, the ultimate psycho. So he's either Jesus or Hitler, depending on who you ask, type of thing. And I find that interesting that there's such a profound dichotomy in how he's viewed. He did some, you know, I don't know what to think about Osho himself, but but there is a freedom to not giving a fuck how you appear.
Yeah.
that is inherent to awakening. And yeah, the fear is gone. And I always found it kind of irritating, like perception management, trying to manage other people's perceptions of you. It's like, fuck that. That's their problem. I
Yeah.
like to say, feel free to get the wrong idea. It's easy to get the wrong idea. Go ahead. Or another way to put it would be like, if someone has like an automatic reaction to you, it's like they don't know you, right? People sometimes will say things like, I don't know about you. And it's like, yeah, you know, you probably won't unless we're friends for like 5 years or something. Then you'll know.
Yeah.
Not till then.
I feel like when you put out art that you have to have that not giving a fuck what others think kind of.
Well, it depends.
I feel okay. Well,
On another level, art
maybe I should speak for myself. For me, I feel for me to put it out, I have to just totally remove myself from the opinion of how it's going to be perceived. Like just totally. Like it could
even have to do it to yourself. You know, you have to like stop your own self judgment. I find that to be an obstacle when I used to play music and stuff. And I think John Lennon had the same issue. Jimi Hendrix. It's kind of like the true artist is, as a seeker, is never satisfied with anything they produce. And so on a certain level, you have to bring yourself somehow closer to just being satisfied with what it is you produce. What I mean by that is like some people that produce really high quality art and music tend to be extremely perfectionistic. And that perfectionism can really mess with your head in a way that can cause suffering. So you almost have to like, okay, no, it's done. Get it out there for people to enjoy. Even though you're like, well, it's not quite done. It's not quite the way I want it. No, just get it out there. And, you know, another level, you know, art is directly tied to the ego because often art and music is like a spontaneous form of self-therapy to get away from the suffering, if not even for a moment, to enter that flow state where the me goes away and the suffering stops. And bliss is inherent to the process of making the art. So it's really the process of singing or playing guitar or painting or whatever it is. It's more about the process of losing yourself in the flow of that process. The flow state of an athlete is the same way. They lose them. And when you lose yourself, you're not thinking about what to do next. You're just, this is happening. And it's happening perfectly efficiently because there's not a me getting in the way. And so it's not like only sages can experience the awakened mind. You know, everybody gets many glimpses of it every day, in between each thought, in between each behavior, in the flow state of being an athlete or creating a work of art or music or dancing or simply driving down the road. And suddenly you're 10 minutes down the road and you go, oh, that's kind of scary. Where was I? I don't remember the last 10 minutes and I arrived safely at the destination. That's kind of spooky. What is that? People call that losing time and think they're going into time portals and shit. Really what happened is the me went away for a while. And notice how it safely drove the car, no problem. So clearly you don't need the me to function at all. It's not like I'm stuttering right now. There's no me in here though. Or rather, the me still functions. It's just no longer identified and no longer seen as a solid real thing or a point of separation, but it's rather seen for what it is. It's functioning. And it's seen right through, no longer identified with. So just like we're still using words right now, there's still a functioning me, if you will. It's just seen very directly that that's an illusion. It's never taken seriously again in anyone ever. And it's not like awakening solves all your problems. It's not like there even are any problems. There's still plenty to do, as it were, after awakening. It's just automatically done effortlessly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good place to end. Did you have anything else? Anything on the brain you wanted to get off?
Do you have to go now?
No. I mean, we can still talk. Just nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
Have you had so tell me about your experiences. Have you had glimpses of this state in different ways, or whatever you want to talk about, whatever bubbles up or not?
So I was a seeker for a long time, and yeah, I guess within the last few weeks, I felt like there was a gradual process of the me thinning, and then just one day I noticed that the seeking, that I was no longer seeking, and I wasn't suffering anything like I was suffering before. I mean, I guess it would depend on what you mean by suffering. I don't feel like I suffer. Like there's problems that come up, but I feel so detached from them that I can't call that suffering. For me, I would say that when the seeking ended, suffering totally ended at that point as well. And since then, I've just been kind of floating a little bit and just writing about it. That's what I do now. Just yeah, I can, when Ramana talked about existence, consciousness, bliss, that's something that resonates with me, and that feels like my experience for the last few weeks. And so yeah, previous to that, I did have moments of like, got it, and then I would, that thing would come to claim it, like, oh, this thing, like, oh, this is the thing, and then slowly that would subside, and then that would cause even more suffering. Once I had a glimpse, and it was different realizations at different, like the first time it happened, it just felt like the guru was doing everything through me. Like everything everything was the guru, and everything was the guru the guru is working through me. And then that went away, and then more and more suffering. So yeah, but I feel like I'm in a good spot right now. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all that really comes up right now. Do you have any other questions or?
Um. Let me think for a minute. Yeah, the whole idea of glimpses, and I like, for example, if somebody has a Kundalini experience, they might notice for a few moments at least at a time, or for a whole episode or something, where the body is moving itself.
Yes.
And they'll realize, like, oh, what is this? The body can move itself. This is kind of freaky. Some people refer to it almost like a possession. Some people, the way I would put it is, we don't move the Kundalini moves us. The same way that the electricity is what fuels a robot. But this is just like kind of like a rarefied type of electricity in a way. Obviously, it's not 100% bound to material like that, but it's like a spooky type of electromagnetism that accompanies electromagnetism but isn't electromagnetism type of thing, the way they usually put it. And there's this rarefied primordial life force it's moving us all, that's orchestrating the exquisite machinery of nature from a deeper level of interconnectivity that the separate sense of self can't even fathom. And in that way, the nature of reality is inherently mysterious, no matter who you are, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
So the way I used to put that, or maybe I still do, is upon awakening, the mystery finally begins.
I'm
The world
finding
seems.
I'm finding more and more comfort in the unknowing and the mystery. Like I always needed, I think everybody, I think they wanted their feet, they wanted something firm, like just even if it was a pinky, just something firm to bounce. And now I'm more embracing the mystery of it all, the unknowing, the unfold, just the whatever this is,
Right. And Zen they call it I don't know mind.
Yeah.
Or another way to put it in Buddhism, they say being comfortable not knowing. People, like if somebody was gossiping, for example, there's like this drive, oh, I gotta know. No, you don't. What is that urge to know? It's funny, as if knowing would help, as if it could be understood or known. It's just one day directly realized that the limits of human knowing, the whole sphere of the ability for a human to know and understand is much smaller than the seeker thinks it is.
Yeah.
When you realize that, the only thing you want to know or understand is like very pragmatic, useful things on a very ordinary level. And that's why some people would rather seek out a charismatic guru instead of a real sage, because a real sage appears as the most ordinary guy you've ever met. So when you meet him, you think, well, this is just some ordinary guy. Where's the big guru I'm looking for? And then, the ordinary sage would give you a big list of all these big charismatic guru figures to go chase. But you really would have woke up faster just hanging out with the sage who seemed very, very ordinary. And, that's kind of interesting too, the way perceptions work like that, right?
You don't think that for some people, maybe for their whatever genes and up-to-date conditioning that they have, like a guru would maybe be a better fit? Or do you not so much?
It's kind of like a step along the journey, right? So a guru is somebody that their role, their function is to deceive you up until the point that you can't be deceived any longer. And after that point, you no longer need the guru. That's another way to look at it. Is that the guru's function isn't to sit there and tell you the truth. It's to sit there and con you for years, potentially, until one day you realize, why am I doing this guy's laundry? Hey, wait.
So would you say it's fair to say that a guru will be more inclined to meet you where you're at, whereas a sage is he's gonna stay at that place. Yeah. He's not gonna come down. He's gonna, that message, the gospel, that's all he's gonna do, and he's not gonna come down into the mud with you.
Yeah, I mean, a sage will meet you where you're at. They just won't budge in their compromising of their message. The guru will lie to you just enough to keep you around.
Yeah.
The sage will tell you the direct truth in a way where you're gonna go, oh, and wander off.
Yeah.
And so the sage is not, and even saying, it's not like there's no deception, because of the nature of paradox. If I even make it seem like there's two of us right here, right now, that's a form of deception. So it's not like the sage is utterly removed from perceptions of deception. You can't really speak the truth. So even attempting to do so is almost a type of deception, but it's nowhere near the level of most gurus.
Yeah. No,
most gurus will pander to you. They'll meet the self halfway, and they'll half lie, half tell the truth, but they won't have the balls to tell you the full truth. Because they want to keep you around to get free hugs and get their laundry done, and have a following. But the sage will eventually tell you to fuck off once you're good and ready.
Yeah, I think Nisargadatta would only let you stay for a very short amount of time before. Exactly. That's if you don't get it after, I think it was like 8 visits or something like that. Then
why are you here again? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Some people want their feet touched.
Say what?
Some people want their feet touched.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe the origin of that is like it's this kind of like the same origin of like washing someone's feet or like or rubbing their feet. I think the origin of that is essentially like, no, don't go. Grab his feet. Grab his feet so he can't wander off in the woods. We need this guy. He's so important. He's so enlightened. Keep him here. I think that's the origin of that. No, stay here. We'll take care of you. Yeah. No, stay here. We'll take care of you. We'll feed you. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and on another level, like if you're really deep in that non-dual awareness, you're almost non-functional on a survival level. So you could wander off into the woods, be eaten by a tiger, and not even fight back. That's the other side of it too. So it's almost like, no, this body is enlightened. It's precious. We need it. Like, because I want that. We all want that. No. Stay around. Stick here. Here, touch his feet. Make sure he can't go. Shackle him to the bench. Something. I think that's part of it. That's why they're saying, no, please don't go. Stay here. And yeah, it's kind of silly, you know. If you're selling pictures of your feet in a gold frame, a sage would never do that. A charismatic guru might. Drunk on power and whatever it is, even if they're awake. You know, it's not like awake people just magically all perceived human flaws are gone or anything like that. Even though everything's perfect, there's still subtle machinations of the ego occurring. So there is an element of truth to the whole spiritual ego thing. As silly as the concept of that is, and the words of it, there's still an element of that where, you know, there could be established weird dynamics that aren't totally appropriate, you know, kind of deifying the guru if it were like that. You know? And the seeking mind wants to do that.
Yeah.
So followers of Tibetan Buddhism will swear up and down that the Dalai Lama is a living God. And the Dalai Lama will swear up and down he's a simple monk. Because it's, you know, he's not deluded, they are, type of deal. And yet even that, you know, it's like when I back in the day, I like false modesty always rubbed me the wrong way. You know? It's like I would prefer someone just be blatantly arrogant and falsely humble. You know? Obviously, we would all prefer everyone to be truly humble. That's the But I would rather someone just be straight up rude, condescending, arrogant than pretend to be humble. And the whole while you can sense they're not, and it's coming from a place of supreme arrogance, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no ego. There's no separate self ever in anyone. So as it appears as perfect, it's all appearing as the greater whole. It's all seamless, flowing whole. It's functioning. And if you deleted any little part of it that one individual deemed bad, the whole universe would crumble away into nothing. So in Buddhism, we call that codependent arising or interbeing. There are no separate things. There are no separate people. And there's nothing missing. The way I joke about it, I say there's an abundance of perceived lack.
Oh yeah.
It's just a projection, right? There isn't actually lack. It's all right here. This is it. But the ego mind, the self, the me, sense of separation, sees lack everywhere. And the suffering, the collective suffering of civilization itself, which is somewhat unnatural in a way, is predicated upon the fear of future human loss. So that's where greed and hoarding come from, for example, which then creates a lack of abundance across the board. There's certain few individuals trying to hoard everything. So the way I look at this is like the mentality of a CEO or a Rothschild, dynastic magnate type person. It's kind of like stealing all the world's oranges and then sitting on a mountain of oranges.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not really that useful. How many oranges can you eat? How much vitamin C do you need? And they're all going to rot, and it's all going to go to waste, and people are going to go hungry. Not because there's a lack of food in the world, not because we're not farming efficiently, because people are hoarding. And there's an element of greed, which is a mental illness. Greed is a mental illness. And it's born out of the ego. You can see different types of ego-based mental illness rear its head. In Hollywood, it's the aggrandizement of the ego, which lends itself to things like Scientology. So Tom Cruise is being told he's the most important man in the world, and he's paying tens of millions of dollars to be told that, so that he can feel that. And that's a mental illness. It's the same mental illness as somebody who has way too much money that they could never spend, and that 12 generations from now could never spend. And yet they want to make a buck every day. They don't retire and enjoy the Bahamas. No. They work 12-hour days to make more money. Well, that's suffering. Donald Trump had all this money, became president, and he's still suffering. Nothing in this world can satisfy the ego mind. So he's up 4 a.m. on Twitter, suffering deeply. Has a golden toilet, has everything the ego mind thinks it would want, and yet deeply suffering. Another way to put that would be Jim Carrey, the way he put that. And Jim Carrey's awake now, which is pretty cool.
I was just about to bring him up to you like 2 seconds ago.
Interesting.
When you were talking about Tom Cruise, for some reason, I thought about him in this Maharishi. Go ahead, though. Sorry.
Yeah, I love Jim Carrey. And,
yeah.
The way he put it is, he said, I wish everybody could become rich and famous so that they would know much sooner. That's not it. There's still this aching hole inside your being that isn't filled by even that. By being loved by the world, by being rich, by being famous, by being viewed as talented and successful and a master of your craft and winning all these awards, and you still don't feel like you're enough. Well, if that's going on on that level, what could you possibly do on this earth you think is going to fulfill you besides awakening? Another way I would put that is, it seems very obvious to me that awakening is directly a prerequisite for true happiness.
Yeah.
In other words, you can see little children when they're 5 and 6, when they're playing, they're squealing with joy. It's just happening, and there's no suffering there. And so when there's no suffering and there's no self, sometimes that little 6-year-old will do things that look kind of almost psychopathic. You get spooked by it. Like, oh my God. Like, it needs to learn good and right and wrong, good and evil. It just did something that made me feel wrong because it didn't have that delusion of there being right, wrong, good, bad. It was just spontaneously behaving naturally. And yet to the adult ego mind, it goes, oh my God, is my kid a psycho? And then the child develops a sense of right and wrong, falls out of paradise, bites the apple in the garden. Now knowledge of good and evil, and then suffering begins. And for many people, that suffering continues until maybe the last few seconds of life, or the last few days of life, or the moment of, because you have to relinquish the sense of self upon death. But if that sense of self is relinquished before death, in a way, you don't have to suffer when death comes, when physical death occurs. And on a certain level, there's no such thing as experiencing death, no matter what, regardless of the metaphysical outcome. Either there's no death and you're still conscious after a physical death, in which case that's not really death, and there's no such thing as death. Or there's absolutely nothing and you don't experience it. But again, there's no experiencer in that which is being experienced. And quantum physicists play this game where they say, the more we don't know, the more we know, and the more we know, the more we don't know. In other words, they play this game of like, well, the real experts of quantum physics have no idea how it works, type of thing. And really, I think I can sum it up in about 10 seconds. The reason this spooky effect is occurring is because that which is observing is that which is being observed. Of course it affects it. It is it.
Yeah.
It's like comparing this apple to this apple. Yeah, it's a one-to-one direct. It is that. Yeah. So even though it's not solid and it's just one huge field of energy, to our eye, that field of energy appears to us as absolutely nothing. And so that the ripples of nothing through nothing, this unified field, or this infinitely open-ended, uncollapsed quantum standing wave pattern type field of energy, is just one big field of energy kind of interacting with itself in different ways and giving rise to these appearances of form and solidity. But there really is no separate form or actual solidity. It's all just a flowing, perfect happening, and none of it's real or unreal. Because again, it's as the world is as real as the body, and they're more real than the separate sense of self, for example. And yet, on another level, there's no actual real world. All realities are virtual, they're imagined, they're dreamt up by a vast, impersonal, spacious, clear, empty awareness. We can't even call it awareness, because it's a separate thing. It's a noun. So it's a background gerund awareing. The word gerund is like if you had a sentence where you said, like, it was raining outside when Bill went to the store. Raining is the gerund. It's that background thing that's happening the whole time the rest of the content of the story is happening. So yeah, Bill's going to the store, but the whole time in the background it's raining. And the whole time in the background there is this awareness itself, awareing. It's a verb rather than a noun, because it's not a separate thing, but it is this background gerund the whole time. And it permeates everything and underpinning everything. And it's the only thing that isn't a thing, as it were. It's not a thing. But even awareness isn't this separate from all of this thing. Is, everything's so deeply interconnected in order for any of it to seem like anything. Here it is. It's a miracle. This is it. It's right here. How does everybody not see this? But until awakening, it's like, how could anybody possibly see this? Then suddenly it's right here. Oh my God, how was I tricked for so long?
It's impossible to see until it's too obvious to ignore. I forget where that comes from.
Yeah, it seems too subtle and too hard to find, until suddenly, all at once, it seems way too obvious. It almost feels like, it's almost too easy to wake up. Not dramatic, but a stark contrast of difference in the lived experience of a human being. And that's funny too, we're a human being. I'm a human being. Oh, you exist, okay. Exist as a separation. People think it's scary, right? To not exist. Well, that's the cause of all your suffering. That's why it's so funny. It's like the key to enlightenment is your greatest fear, and you're programmed to be terrified of the key to enlightenment. It's almost hilarious if it wasn't so sad. The human being is programmed to be abjectly terrified by the non-existence of the me. And yet that's the cause of all suffering, and seeing through that is the key to enlightenment. And we're programmed to be afraid of it. The me is programmed to be afraid of it.
The me wants to own it, wants to be able to put it across its chest, like with a gold medal that says,
the dinner plate had gold medal. Yeah. And that's the mental illness of the me. It thinks it's special. But really, when you directly realize that everyone already is this, so you're not special. You're unique, just like everyone else. And the way I like to put that is, everyone has a unique fingerprint. Everyone. We all share that in common. Or another way to put that is, have you noticed that every single unique snowflake has that same hexagonal shape?
Yeah.
There's a common theme, a common core to all these expressions. And all the expressions are definitely unique. Every seeming moment is definitely unique. No person occurs twice, even second to second. And so there's no unchanging self. The self, in a way, is kind of like a candle flame or a waterfall. It's just kind of this ever-changing, yet still there as almost a thing, not quite. And yet it's never not moving. There's always this movement. And that movement is like a verb. It's not like a noun. Even if you looked at a brick and you said, well, it's not moving. Well, bullshit. The atoms in there are buzzing around.
Yeah.
All it is a field of energy interacting with itself. It's not even solid. And you can knock on the table and go, well, I don't know. It seems pretty convincing. It seems pretty persistently real. Yeah, it seems that way. There's so many ways to look at everything. But really, it's only in our everyday, evolved, perceptual perspective that we are essentially programmed to see things as if they're a certain way, even if they're not, because that delusion somehow helps the body survive a little longer.
Yeah.
And, if you had absolutely no ego, you'd probably die within a few days. You'd bump into a cactus or some shit. I'm one with the cactus. You run up, bear hug it, and you die pretty quick. So you don't need to re-merge with everything. You already are one with everything. It's not like oneness has to occur. It's already there at all times. It's not something. That's why yoga and meditation are they might be helpful in certain ways, but they're not like a direct path to awakening necessarily, because they're painted with this flavor of seeking that thinks that you have to somehow merge everything back together, even though it's already merged. And it's okay to speak, it's okay to seemingly do things, but in the background you kind of remember or realize that, like, I'm dreaming right now. This isn't real. You're always, or you can kind of go in and out of that lucidity right now. The same way you would in a dream. Oh, I'm lucid. Right now, this is a dream right now. Either, regardless of what you believe, either the brain is generating all this, or more likely, consciousness is dreaming up the brain, which is then dreaming up the false sense of me and all human experience. But there are seemingly experiences and emotions and memories you can have that really have nothing at all to do with the human being. And that's kind of what interests me, almost as a shred of evidence for something deeper going on, because those types of experiences, I don't really see how they could have an evolutionary underpinning. In other words, there's no real reason through the lens of evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology for those experiences to occur. And nature doesn't usually do things that don't have a function. Like even vestigial organs and bones within an animal, they still serve some level of purpose, or else it wouldn't be there, right? The human tail doesn't serve a purpose, so there isn't one. There's no human tail. So whatever is seemingly the case, even as an appearance, has some functioning within this greater whole, including the ego mind.
Yeah. That's all the questions I have.
It was always a pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm liking some of the poetry prose stuff you're putting up.
Oh, good. Thanks.
All right. Well, it was a good talking to you. Hopefully we can get sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I always
All
enjoy
right, Jay
talk again soon. I appreciate
All right, take it easy.
it. Have a good one.